Hello, my name is Elisabetta, and I'm here to bring a message that has to do with something that I believe is of the essence. Something that has to do with the banking industry in our country that I believe many people are feeling and sensing and possibly starting to just suspect, but don't really know what is going on. Today, I spent a number of hours at the annual general meeting of the ANZ Bank, out of which there was a huge panel of directors, including the CEO, Shane Elliott. Now, my story is very simple. A couple of years ago, I pulled up the ANZ Bank about a loan that I believed was not properly assessed. And when I actually asked them for the documents I received in the bundle, when they sent me the documents back, there was some fraudulent tax returns and a number of other discrepancies in the documentation. So that began a journey of investigation with them. And that investigation has lasted almost 2 years. And within these 2 years, the bank did nothing but delegate, defer responsibility to the broker. However, in that process of investigation, I discovered a lot of things, and those things included discrepancies in what they were saying and what they had done on the paperwork, which proved beyond a shadow of doubt that the ANZ Bank had in fact acted against the National Credit Protection Act Code, more accurately the ASIC Regulatory Guide 209, different types of paragraphs like 129 and 123, wherein a bank is required, when it comes to responsible lending, for example, to do certain investigation. They shouldn't take the broker's word for it. And instead, what they were saying, first of all, is that the broker gave us these documents, so therefore they're yours, even though they're fraudulent. Like the tax returns were literally fraudulent. They were not my tax return. They didn't take responsibility for it. Kept saying that it was the broker that gave it to them. But the interesting thing is that the ANZ Bank has an originator portal, which is a portal that they have for brokers to upload all documentations online. And when I went to look into that, I found that they have in one of the section where it has to do with retaining documentation, ANZ Bank specifically tells the brokers that the documents that they upload will be deleted after 12 months. Now, considering this was a legal transaction that had to do with contract, with a long-term contract, beats me how the ANZ Bank eliminates documents after 12 months. In other words, there is no trail for them to be able to prove that it was in fact the broker that actually falsified those tax returns as opposed to them. The other thing that they did is, then eventually they sort of were trying to brush me off about the fact that it wasn't their problem, that these documents were falsified. It looked like they were mine, so they had no reason to believe they were not mine. The other thing that they then argued, which is I pulled them up on, is that this was supposed to be a full documentation application. And here's the deal, folks. I want you to really listen and just get the gist of it, because the bank drove me absolutely up the wall. I applied in May 2017, and all that they accepted, I applied with an ABN number. I actually applied through a broker as a low doc, and apparently they said it wasn't a low doc. And that's how they sent me all the documentations that they had. However, all that they used to assess an over $500,000 loan was essentially 2 years of previous year past tax return. And in that year, the entire year of 2017, that we were almost at the end of, i.e. May 2017, they have absolutely nothing. There is no BAS return, there is no profit and loss statement, there is no letter from my accountant, there is no bank statements of my business to see if this business was still viable or if I had gone bankrupt in the process, because the tax return showed that I was earning $120,000, even though they were not mine. So they relied on that, and they reckoned that it was just fine. On top of that, there were inflated amounts inside the loan application, which I had never seen before. So I don't know who did them, but essentially they didn't take any accountability for it. In other words, they took me through the mill. And today, for the first time, I went face to face with Shane Elliott, who's the CEO of the ANZ Bank. And I basically told him a piece of my mind, because they have done nothing. So the way that the annual general meeting today was structured was all about them talking about how wonderful they are for their investors, and they were talking about all these projects and things. And as soon as somebody came in and started asking them a question that had to do with liar loans, that had to do with discrepancies in the way that the bank is doing, they either brushed people off, gaslighted them, told them that it wasn't appropriate for that particular part of the meeting. In other words, they did not want to discuss anything that has to do with some of the discrepancies and the lies and the deception that ANZ Bank does on a consistent basis. So they did this with a number of people, and all they did was they went back to basically kind of not answering about a lot of other things. They were kind of sort of going around the circling sometimes questions. They're very skilled, very skilled in the way that they put their phrases, and they always make very sure that they don't put their foot in it. So if there's something that it gets a little bit into hot water, what they usually do is they just simply we're telling people like, oh, okay, well, if that's all the question, we can address this in another moment. So in other words, they did not want to address this at all, which is like gaslighting and deferring the language, which is a tactic that they use. It's spiritual warfare. It's psychological warfare. That's what it is. They basically take you through that process of making you doubt, even that your question was legitimate. And so this is kind of like the narcissistic kind of mind frame that they use in order to diminish people's issues, especially when it comes to major issues. And I actually have that video, and I would love to be able to start sending that video viral, because it was the first time in over 2 years that I was able to come to this annual general meeting. And even though I did not end up buying shares, because they would give only those who had shares, I had to basically just stand up and speak up, because I felt this was an opportunity. And I did feel that the issue that I have had with this is that they had never took accountability for what they've done. They eventually gave me some small remedy, which essentially, if this loan was going to be found to have been done through fraud and irresponsible lending, they should have given me a very large compensation. And instead they got away with a tiny little slap over the wrist, even though I went through AFCA, because ideally and essentially AFCA is actually funded by the banks. And so guess what? This entire little game is usually based around the fact that they have absolutely full monopoly of their system that actually supports them. So they also know that people like myself and normal everyday people are not going to take them to court, because everybody knows that the banks have got this array of resources that most of us don't have. And most of us, for us, it's personal. We don't necessarily want to lose the little that we have, whether it's our home or our things. And so we try different avenues to see if we can get justice. But then when we go inside the system, we realize there is no justice. And they bank on that. They seriously bank on the fact that essentially they are backed up by the systems. And oh, by the way, I did go eventually to ASIC and asked to investigate them, and they told me they weren't going to investigate them. And then I went even to some of our politicians. I can even mention who they are. I went to One Nation Party and whatever. They all gave me these little dangling carrots. And guess what? None of them did actually anything until today, that I took full satisfaction to go and look at these people in the face, and none of them knew what they were saying. Oh, there was the chairman that he was trying to deviate me and stop me from speaking, with his wonderful little condescending and, oh yes, we're going to do this. And by the way, I'm going to hold him accountable. So if you don't mind, please make this video viral, because I want these people to start getting accountable and putting their money where their mouth is, because they say things, and then when people go and contact them behind the scenes, they do the same thing. They will delegate, they will defer, they will pretend, because to them, as far as they're concerned, we don't have any power. We don't have people power. Today I was standing there, and I'm telling you this honestly. I am speaking, I believe, for millions of Australians who have no voice. And I had the courage to stand up there and speak, because I almost lost my home. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of people in Australia at the moment that are on the brink of losing their home. Most of those loans, if you went to investigate, were actually liar loans. People got them in a way that it was fraudulent, or done in a way that it wasn't above board. Now you say, well, then why do you go and ask for a loan if you can't afford it? That's besides the point. I was actually refinancing. That's beside the point. The point is they cannot get away with apportioning loans to people. And today, the chairman was sort of saying, why would we want to do something like that? Let me answer that question for him, which I didn't get to answer for him, and I'm here to answer it right now. It's called asset stripping. It's called asset stripping because when they do that and they know that people eventually can't afford this, eventually they come in, they take over your property, and then they basically take your asset. They make the money 10 times over, because if those of you who don't know, I mean, the banks make money a number of times. By the way, the bank, ANZ Bank, has got an originator portal, which to my understanding, originator portals are usually established when the loans that are put through that portals don't ever actually see the bank, because what the bank does is it unsells it before it even sees the system. Why do they do that? Because it makes them a huge amount of profit. They don't have to risk anything. You're risking your home. You're risking your livelihood. You're risking everything. And all they do is they just play these little games in the backdrops. And then they come to an annual general meeting, and they were basically talking about all these weird and wonderful things that the bank is doing for the investors. And the investors are basically now, if they're making profits, is actually on the piggyback ride of people like ourselves that are Australians that are paying every month, thousands and thousands of dollars, and then they decide to, the Reserve Bank decides to put up interest. It's all a game. It's a psychological game. What they want is to continue to keep people in distress. They never want people to really become wealthy. And the reason is because if people are not going to become wealthy, they don't have any power. Or so they think anyway. They think that power is only having money and having influence. There are other types of power that God gives us, and that is our God-given right to speak the truth about what is just and what is not just, what is fair, what is not fair, what is true, what is not true, and what is deception and what is lies. That needs to be exposed, because we are coming to a time where these giants, these banking giants that are basically for the most part acting fraudulently in deception, and they come with a front making it look like they're all above board and they're all doing these weird and wonderful things. You should see some of the stuff that I have discovered about how banks operate. They will never come and talk about that at the annual general meeting. And in fact, when somebody even just tries to even hint at it, they will basically make it look like it's not something to be discussed. In fact, I believe the chairman also said today something about not creating precedent. Guess what? This is why we have the issue that we have in Australia. We have this issue because the place is so corrupt all the way to the judicial system, wherein that's exactly what happens. They do not want to create precedents. Now, here's the deal, folks. They are basically drowning us in debt. They are drowning us in all these different systematic things that are deceptive, deviously deceptive, to the point that if I were to show you some stuff, you would say, how is that even possible that this is what they're doing in our country? But guess what? That is precisely what's going on. And I'm speaking the truth. I've come to a place where I can share the video about when I stood up to Shane Elliott, the CEO, today in front of an array of people and shareholders in the room who had all come in there to hear about how wonderful the ANZ Bank is doing. But guess what? They're doing that again in so many ways because they're doing a lot of devious things behind the scenes that they never tell you about. They never tell us about. And that includes the loan, how they create loans, how they securitize loans, which means that basically your loan has been paid 10 times over. You pay when you apply, and then the moment you put a signature on a piece of paper, you've given them a guarantee. They use that guarantee to generate the funds. They never give you anything. And then they make you believe that you are actually a debtor instead of a creditor. Then they go and sell the thing to a third party without telling you, which is a breach of contract. I mean, the stuff is just so... It's just so absolutely devious that now I'm at a point where I've been quiet for years. And today I realized that unless we begin to speak up and find our voice as it really should be, because there's a lot of people at the moment in Australia that are so accustomed to doing the goody two shoes, where we don't, you just basically try to always sugarcoat everything. I think the time for sugarcoating stuff is over, folks, because they're going to come over, they're going to raid the bloody place, and they're going to take just about everything that you have if we're not careful. They're trying to collapse the market. What do you think they're doing all this stuff for? They tried with COVID, and then, I mean, none of us have been, they call it the new normal. What new normal, folks? I mean, it's absolutely crazy what they're doing at the moment. It is absolutely unthinkable And then we're all sitting there, and the other thing that they're doing is they are separating us. They are not just separating us, they are putting us against each other. And they're giving all these dangling carrots, even within the freedom fighting groups. And the reason they're doing that is because they're quite happy for you and me to just be by ourselves, fighting our own battles. And whilst we fight these battles, nobody is really understanding how deeply sort of deceptive the system is and what they're really up to. And I really am hoping that I can share the video that I spoke, because this needs to go viral. I don't know how else to do it. I went to the ABC News earlier this year, managed to get a 4-minute coverage. I mean, the whole thing was a little bit convoluted. Like, she just put some stuff in there, but she left it a little bit shady as to whether it was the broker's fault or, but from the things that I have learned and looked at, there is absolutely no shadow of doubt that the responsibility still falls on the bank. It doesn't matter whether you go through a broker. The bank has to do their due diligence in a way where they have to follow certain protocol. And today I was sitting there listening to the chairman saying that this is what they do, when I know full well that that's not what they've done on my lawn. And if they've not done it on my lawn, and I had another 3 or 4 people there that were trying to bring the same issue, and they tried to shut them up as well. So when is this going to stop, fellow Australians? I mean, we're here. We need to really unite with this, because otherwise these systems are going to take over, and they're not just going to take over the lands and your title deeds and your houses or whatever. They take everything that you have. So we must find a voice wherein we have to all stand up. I want to see how many of you are going to come up and say, listen, let's investigate this. They need to be flooded with people that want the truth. Because if we go as individuals, I tell you what they do. Oh, they're very good. And if you're not strong enough, and if you don't have a strong character, and if you don't know the truth because you haven't done enough investigation behind the scenes to see how the systems are really operating, not what they tell you that they do, because, oh my goodness, you should have seen the setup there with all the wonderful ANZ logos, and, them all sitting there with their suits and all their the chairman board, and Mr. Elliott, who was very eloquent whenever they ask him questions about things that he knows. But as soon as you ask him a question that has to do with irresponsible lending, with liar loans, they just throw some stuff at you to shut you up. This has to stop. People of Australia, this has to stop. There's so many of you that are struggling and are suffering. Please understand that I did not fight. I don't believe that I fought this battle just for myself. I did manage to get a small remedy from them, but I'm telling you, it's just not even a drop in the ocean of what they should have done. But guess what? They do not want to create a precedent. And by them making me sign what they call the deed of settlement, one thing that they didn't do is they didn't ask me to shut up, because they cannot. I have freedom of speech. And so, yes, I had to sign that because they were taking me through the mill. 2 years of corresponding and conclusions and AFCA and going through so many different avenues to try and get them to look at this document and say, this is what it is. This is what you've done. Can you see this? Can you see this? Here is this. And I was pointing and I underlining and in red and in bold. And that still didn't work. But what they do think, I think, is that we have no power. Let me tell you this, we do have power. We do have power. Today I felt it when I was speaking there in front of Mr. Elliott. And that is going to go up on Facebook, and maybe I will share it even in the lip. I would like you to please, if you want, contact me directly, because I do believe that we need to raise a movement here in Australia that stops these people doing this sort of crap that they're doing. They are lying, they are deceiving, and they are literally destroying people's lives. And they are doing so in a way that is just so subtle, almost to make it look like they're the good guys. They are the ones that are improving our country. What a lot of rubbish. Like I said, it's just a bloody circus. And I'm somebody that likes to work transparently and above board. I'm happy with any of you that wants to come and sit with me. I will show you straight away all the documents that I have. And you can only take a look at it once, a few seconds, and I'll show you that what I am saying is the truth. I have no reason I have no reason to lie about the fact that ANZ has just not done what they were supposed to do. And so I tried to get some traction through the media, but then I discovered even that the media is kind of, I think they did a segment, but it wasn't anywhere like what it should have done to really expose the rubbish that goes on in our country. Now, if you feel strongly about this, or if you know anybody that is suffering due to this sort of stuff, and I suggest that all of you that have got loans, most of you don't understand that, most of your loans are securitized anyway, which means somebody has already paid for your loan, and there you are be made to think that you still owe them money. Like, this is truly devious, and most of us are struggling to put food on the table. And you think that's fair? That is just. It cannot go on like this. There has to be at least some kind of uncovering of this, so that they are just put to shame, because at the end of the day, that's their place. I could not believe my ears what I was hearing. I was there for 3-4 hours today, listening to all these different people asking questions, and they were just. And then in the end, I just basically, that was it for me. The more I was listening to all the crap that they were just delivering to people, and they think that everyone is stupid or dumb, or that we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. I'm telling you, most banks are acting fraudulently, the dealings that they do, and they're doing this all at the expense of good, honest Australian people who go to work every day. Some of us get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to try and make ends meet. Come on, folks. It must be something we can do. And not by one of us by ourselves maybe cannot do that. And we cannot rely on the media either, because they're corrupt. And in all the different systems, they're corrupt. But we, in our hearts, when we are standing in the truth and in the light of our Creator God, then we can truly and honestly bring something transparently, honestly. I'm happy to show any of you the documents that I talk about. And if you can tell me that you think that the bank did the right thing, then we can go from there. Otherwise, if we find that what I'm saying is true, then there must be a way that we can tackle this to be able to help many of you that are suffering. That's my message today. It's a message. It's a message that I share from my heart, because this has made me suffer a lot, and I'm just hoping that this suffering is not for no reason. There has to be a reason. And I'm really hoping that it can change somebody's life, and it can help us awaken in this country and show these people that just because they're a large organization and they're giants and they have all these systems backing them up, it doesn't mean that they always win. It shouldn't mean that they always win. And they do so via deception, sitting on their big fat checks. I can't even imagine how much they earn every year. And most of us are struggling. Why? Because they do the wrong thing. They apportion loans they shouldn't be apportioned. You say, oh yeah, but I bought a property. And yeah, but most people are struggling. There has to be another way. They have to find another more honest way to deal with us being able to get wealth and to get ahead, which is not what they do at all. And if you care to see how they do that, I'm happy to show it to you, because I've done a lot of study and research in the past 20 years, so I'm not oblivious to it. I hope you can share this message, please, to whoever you feel needs it, because it is time. It is time that we truly and honestly gather our strengths, gather our loins, and truly and honestly stand up to these people. Otherwise, they'll just take over. They've been taking over anyway, but they will take over, and then when they get to a point where we won't be able to do anything anymore, then it's going to be really hard. It's already hard, but I'm telling you, where they're headed, it's not going to be a place that any of you would want to know where they're taking us. Please take this message as one of deep concern. I don't want to use another word, because otherwise people think that, you try to scare people. That's not what it is. It is a sincere and honest attempt to say we must do something together. May God bless you all.